The future of crypto is the blending of TradFi and DeFi. Crypto really has product market fit in three domains, right? Which is payments, profits, and Ponzi's. The hardest thing for any community to do is figure out how to grow without losing the kernel of what made it special in the first place. The core value is not profit maximization, right? The core value is real value for real people in the real world.
So, welcome to the PayFi mini-series.
Pleasure.
We start this mini-series with asking everybody the same question, and we're getting fascinating answers. What does PayFi mean to you?
What does PayFi mean to me? So in a literal sense, of course, I think of it as payment financing is usually where I go for. But I think what it actually represents to me is much larger, of course, than just that. I think that there is an overemphasis for a lot of crypto people, especially kind of crypto OGs, that there is TradFi versus DeFi. And that these are two kind of separate concepts that are somehow in opposition with each other. And I really am quite convinced that the future of crypto is the blending of TradFi and DeFi. More TradFi coming into DeFi, more DeFi affecting TradFi, into what we might call, like unify or something like this, right?
I love that.
Unify. That's not bad, yeah. Huh? That's not bad. Look at us. I told you when the lights are on. But I do think that the future of crypto is unify, as we'll say, where you see not just real world assets coming into DeFi, but also all the types of innovative permissionless systems that we see in DeFi actually creating more value in TradFi. And in my mind, there is nowhere where that is more clear than in PayFi. So it is I think a fundamental and gigantic step forward in terms of what crypto can offer to the world. And that is why I am unspeakably bullish.
I love it. It's so amazing, man. You can just create this mind virus on the spot. Unify.
It's not bad.
It's amazing. Because a lot of times when we try to explain to ourselves, the first thing we actually think through is this unification of TradFi and DeFi, and we call it the TradFi-DeFi flywheel, and how you create that. And it's so clear to us. And this was actually pitched to us by one of the largest fund managers in Europe. They're kind of like an Asia-Europe joint fund. And this guy is a genius economist. And they move large sums. And he was explaining to us that with the macroeconomy shifting to an kind of always on inflation mode, a lot of what TradFi looks for and is looking for is appearing more and more on the DeFi side. It's just not packaged the right way to be accessible to them.
Right.
And the risks are not necessarily well understood or well hedged against, for them to easily access and entertain themselves within this world. And they're saying, we're spending so much time both educating this TradFi world, but also trying to create this kind of hybrid products that are so much more accessible, which are literally a mirror of what's happening on DeFi, because behind the scenes, they're all on smart contracts. But when it comes to what they interact with, it's basically a simple fund structure or stuff like that. You can think about it as more of an evolved version of these ETFs, which simply just holds the assets versus some other structure that actually has some hedging happening on the DeFi world. So that's the fascinating part, and you call it unify. I'm going to remember this forever. There's also this interesting thing happening. You're a Solana OG. You spend a lot of time at the foundation, building ecosystems around the world, and now you're herding cats all around the world. But what makes Solana ecosystem so bullish about PayFi? Solana was one of the first ecosystems to build this side protocol almost called Solana Pay. It's spent a lot of time and resources to bring in this large payment institutions. Obviously, we got convinced also by the foundation ecosystem to move from EVM Solana. Why? As someone who's been in this ecosystem for a long time, why are they focusing on this domain?
I think there's probably three reasons. So the first reason that must be said is Lily, who's the president of the foundation, a mutual friend of ours, I think has had a lot of great ideas. She has a lot of great ideas in general. But she, I think, from just a leadership perspective, has really articulated the value of PayFi very well and recruited and attracted incredibly high quality founders like yourself to kind of help further that mission. So part of it is kind of operational. But I think the deeper strategic reason is, within Solana, we've always, I think, had the benefit of being very pragmatic rather than ideological, which is what you see in a lot of other ecosystems. And of course, there's value in having whatever censorship-resistant money, and of course, there's value in being kind of like immune to nation-state attacks and things like this that really concern a lot of other ecosystems. But I think the primary focus for Solana has always been creating real value in the real world for real people, right? If all we are doing is kind of working with academics and philosophers to have things that sound very good but no one actually cares about, that's not success, right? No matter what the token price is. And so that's been a driving kind of motivation for a while. I will say, half jokingly, that crypto really has product market fit in 3 domains, right? Which is payments, profits, and Ponzi's.
Yep.
And we don't want to have anything to do with the Ponzi's, right? And on the profits, like the speculation side, I think for a bunch of different reasons, Solana is already the best place to go there. And it was really payments that seemed like a clear win for us, right? Couldn't really do it on any other network. Solana, fast, cheap, composable, et cetera. But actual just kind of like person-to-person payments or remittances and so on, it's really just the first step, right? That's very much like blockchain 1.0 kind of thinking. That was important in basically every early white paper. But because the foundation and many of the people here are looking for, okay, how do we create excess value beyond just the kind of the obvious things? That's when the idea of PayFi started to kind of percolate. People really appreciated, like, hey, this is, in total, like $1 trillion opportunity, maybe multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, right? Like every business in the world needs payment financing in an increasingly globalized and interconnected world. You really need a PayFi to be even more of a strong force there. And we just see the future of the world being increasingly global, settling on public blockchains that are credibly neutral, that can have a kind of meritocratic open space that anyone around the world can participate in. And so it really just kind of fit hand in hand with the kind of the pragmatism that we want to have, and this idea that payments is a clear use case, but payments by themselves are not enough. You need to do interesting things around payments for it to be fun.
And you guys, when I say you guys, Jupiter folks, especially you, Miao, Xiong, Soju, have been, incredible in helping us like open our minds to how this around the payments could look like when it comes to DeFi. So it's almost like, we worked so hard for months to figure out this, like, what does the PayFi-DeFi flywheel look like? And initially, when we had this conversation, obviously what Huma does is first and foremost a PayFi infrastructure, and that serves a lot of payment institutions in the real world, creates a lot of payment flows, and the liquidity comes from stable coins on chain. And initially that stablecoin yield and the LP was only for institutions as well. So institutions want to get capital from institutions. And you guys challenged us really hard to think about, okay, we have this like real world payments happening. They are, driving more value. They're happening faster. It's helping people send cross-border payments. It's helping people, settle faster, use, more different types of assets for their cards. It's helping, companies settle payments in T+0. It's helping the whole supply chain. It's helping the workforce in emerging markets. So this is so much it's doing in the real world. And the network is making a lot of revenues because of the fees collected, in these transactions that are settling. And you guys are, challenging us to package it in a way that this yield and revenues are accessible to anybody, in DeFi in a very simple form of a, yield-bearing LP token. And that was, game changer, because when we launched Huma 2.0 2 weeks ago, with this PSD PayFi strategy token that people can, use on Jupiter and soon use on Camino as a collateral, and also other parts of Solana DeFi, we saw like a flood of people coming in, and we even like blocked as much as we can the institutional flows. Like we set a cap, as like $250,000 because we know like institutions are trying to like
otherwise
get in and
gobble
just, like,
up all the yield.
Exactly, right? Like they want to get all the yield they can. But we want to give it to the DeFi ecosystems and the people like who are trying to access this kind of yield. So we set a cap, and institutions are a bit pissed, but whatever. We saw like this 6x growth, in just like 2 weeks.
It's crazy.
It's
like
crazy.
4 billion in volume, I just saw.
4 billion in total transaction volume.
Insane.
It's like it's growing at like 600 million a month rate right now. And it's getting out of hand. And we didn't expect this, but I think you guys like really helped us think about this flywheel. And we're just starting to see, what the simplest MVP version of it can do. I'm curious about your thoughts around like what does this, PayFi-DeFi flywheel can look like, in a more extended period of time. Like what else, can happen?
Well, I would say that the kind of foundational like soil for all of crypto is liquidity, right? Like in order for anything of interest to grow, liquidity needs to be there.
Right.
And while there is, of course, a lot of crypto native liquidity, it is a tiny, 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 tiny fraction of the actual liquidity that exists in traditional markets. And so having value propositions like PayFi that I think are intelligible and exciting to traditional finance helps draw in much more liquidity, which then allows new and interesting kind of DeFi use cases to spring out of it, right? So in my mind, DeFi is kind of like PayFi is kind of laying the kind of soil that allows more DeFi experiments to grow. When there's more liquidity and when there's more players on board, once they're on chain, once they already have kind of experimented a little bit with something that feels kind of familiar to them, they're going to be better able to start to go out a little bit further on the risk curve and explore new options. And PayFi, I think, is a foundational offering for, again, as I say, basically every business, like it's certainly any international business that exists, right? Once they're there and they can see that crypto can draw real value for their business, I think it opens up all sorts of opportunities for, let's say, treasury management, for example, right? Or generating yield in other ways on other treasury assets that they might have, doing payroll via, DeFi and other kind of PayFi products. So it is kind of the tip of the spear. It is the wedge, is probably a better way to say it, that allows a lot of traditional institutions to come on chain and start to find a lot of value in things that previously might have seen through degen or whatever else. I think it is also really valuable as we push towards like a unified world for the culture of crypto to start to evolve, right? The hardest thing for any community to do is to figure out how to grow without losing the kernel of what made it special in the first place. But the way that you do that is by identifying clear values that really matter. And the value that matters to me, and I think a lot of people in Solana, is real value for real people in the real world. And the more that we can have PayFi and DeFi kind of make that handshake and set that as the cultural tone rather than the core value of 10,000% APY like we see in other ecosystems. The core value is not profit maximization, right? The core value is real value for real people in the real world. And I think that's really where that flywheel starts to become super powerful, both on like a tactical basis, but also on that kind of cultural basis.
I love that. And it really ties into this kind of like motto everybody likes to talk about. Is like X is for everyone. We see it, happening. All the chains talking about it's for everyone. All the projects talking about is for everyone. It's a really, really hard thing to be for everyone, and especially if you started from the hearts of the degen ecosystems, it's very hard to evolve from there to be for everyone, and something we think very hard about. And maybe for us, the challenge is a bit different because we're coming from the other world. We're coming from the real world, interacting with the real businesses and the real value generated in that world, and trying to bring it to the DeFi ecosystem. And you guys are going the other way around, right? You're kind of like building this SuperApp that you talked about today, and you're going from this like super hardcore product, which I love and use, and that that's my like main mobile wallet.
Yeah, used it yesterday for a relatively high risk of trade as well. That one we won't talk about on here, but yeah.
Yes, trying to get into the Trump. I'm trying hard.
Hey, don't let anybody tell you Erbil doesn't work for his bags, man. He's out here.
Just doing for fun, and it's giving me a lot of chills as well. The funny thing is, it's an amazing experience, right? Like that mobile experience. I'm not using it because I love you guys, which I do, but it's just the best mobile experience I have for like simple things I want to do, stupid things I want to do,
and everything in between.
Like everything in between, I'm using it. Also, I get really good prices on like very common trades, like just buying BTC, with USDC and stuff like that. But obviously, it's still not there, when you think about what everybody in the world wants to see when they think about SuperApp, because they still need to understand a lot of things happening within that. So tell me about that journey. That how do you see the steps that you guys need to take to be for everyone, right?
Yeah.
To go from this kind of like hard off the degen to really something that anybody can touch, including my mom, and see the value and use it for that.
We've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years since Jupiter got started, I think, building like the best kind of swap experiences there, and that's why we're like very dominant there. And it is just the case that it services this kind of particular use case very well. But we've somewhat saturated the market on that, if we're being honest, right? I know like last year for a period of time, Jupiter was like 50% of every Solana block. Like we're doing quite well. So in order to kind of grow the pie even further, what we know we need to do is kind of extend on either side. So more things for new users and more things for power users, right?
Yeah.
So on the new user side, what we really want to do is build Jupiter to be the best entry point to Solana and the best entry point to going on chain more generally. we have offerings like on-ramp, we have offerings like bridging over to Solana,
You have
Invite
Moonshot.
Flow. We have Moonshot now as well, kind of like in the extended Jupiter family and so on. But I think there's still a lot more work to be done there, where it feels not just easy, but also safe to do, right? And so on the product level, I think that's a real focus for us. When is this coming out?
Soon.
Soon? Okay, so I can't drop too much off of that. But we have like a specific product that's going to be coming out, I think, to help make that entry point value prop even more clear. Because what we've seen is if we can get people into the Jupiter ecosystem, if they start with Jupiter, because of the strength of the community, because of the simplicity of the products, it's very likely they'll stick around and not just churn, right? Which is not the same for people that start with other apps I won't name necessarily, where they try it, they're like, this sucks, and they immediately leave. So we really want to do more on the entry point side. And I think that is how we kind of expand the pie and get your mom and my mom actually into crypto, making it feel so easy and so simple to discover new opportunities that they're really interested. And then on the other end, more power user kind of options, right? So I'm really excited about Jupiter Portfolio. I check it every day as like the best way to kind of stay on top of all of my DeFi positions, because I use more than a dozen different DeFi protocols. But I think we want to do more there in terms of not just being able to view those protocols, but also starting to manage those more actively and improve discovery of even new apps right now. Right now, the hardest thing for any new Solana app is kind of like the go-to-market. And I think Jupiter has aggregated not just all the liquidity, but so much of the attention and demand on Solana that we think we can play a really powerful role there. And the more things there are to do on chain, and the more that those are surfaced through Jupiter, the more Jupiter becomes that kind of super app where the tagline is just use Jupiter. It's like, I want to see what's newest. Just go use Jupiter. You want to do XYZ thing in DeFi? I can't say exactly what or I'll get killed. Just use Jupiter, right? You want to bring your friends on chain? Just use Jupiter. So I think that's where we're going. There's no doubt that there are some risks here as well. Many great companies have faced trouble after trying to go more horizontal, like they kind of lose focus. I don't think that's going to happen to us, largely because of the acquisition strategies that we've had to build out teams that are able to build those out with full focus, while our core team or the OG team focuses very core on what they're good at. But that's where we're going, I think,
And I see this, when you try to build something that's mainly focused on, trading and swaps, obviously there's an audience that captures, but that audience is not, everybody, right? There's also this other super app strategy, and it's something actually, it's reminded every single time I open Jupiter mobile app, it reminds me the experience I had on Cash App. Being a US fintech kind of veteran, Cash App was always this kind of like UX kind of god that people loved because it's just so simple and so easy. All you had to do is just like, scan a QR code or know the handle of the person you're sending it to. Just as popular as Venmo, but the simplicity was just like so good, just like so amazing, and the UI felt so good. And Jupiter, reminds me of that. And people are looking into this, everyday payments solutions. They're looking at cash products, card products, savings products. That kind of becomes like your backbone of like, okay, this is a wallet for me. It's like an account for me. I'm like managing my account. At the same time, I have access to, this and this and this and this. And probably only, being built around the stable coins and around the blockchains, you can kind of like create this applications without actually the complexity of doing that in the fiat world. I'm curious, like, what's the plan for Jupiter to extend beyond just the buying and selling and trading, or maybe more pro trading use cases? Kind of when you look at Binance, for example, it's pushing the Binance payments, peer-to-peer payments, hard with partnering with Circle around the world. Is that the books for Jupiter as well?
I would, again, I can't say too much without getting slaughtered after this. Like, I have to have a life after the cameras turn off, so I have to be mindful. But I think that an easy kind of mental model is that on a 2-year time frame, everything that you would want to do with money anywhere should be something that you can do with Jupiter. So the specifics of that, again, I can't say. But yes, we are exploring, and we have a lot of different partners that we're talking to about everything from things around payments, things around other DeFi use cases, and entirely other fun offerings. I think we're going to end up surprising people. That's my goal. Yeah.
I would say that's the most bullish way we can end this
That's pretty good. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you so much for it.
Of course, buddy. Anytime. Yeah.